You're listening to the Fun Never Ends podcast with Metalhead Nelson.
Hey, welcome to the Fun Never Ends podcast. I'm your Metalhead Nelson, and with me is my co-host Brutal Brett. Brutal Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's another exciting episode. We have another special guest with us. Why don't you introduce yourself to the listener audience space?
Hello, my name is Aaron Robitsch, and I am guitarist, keyboardist of Graveshadow, keyboardist of Niviane, and keyboardist of Crepusle.
Yeah, you guys are badass. I've got to see Graveshadow. I got recommended Graveshadow by my friend Jana, which you guys kick ass.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to Jana for bringing me here as well.
Yep. And I was going to wear this.
Hey.
Nocturnal. Great album. So is Ambition's Price and the new album.
Thank you. All great records to perform live and just listen to on the side.
Let's talk about Graveshadow. Talk about the beginning when you got the whole Graveshadow thing going.
Yeah. So that one, I'm actually not an original member of that band. Currently the only original member left is our guitarist Will Walker. He formed the band, I recall correctly, in 2012. And most of the original lineup is on Nocturnal Resurrection, actually. I think the only different members from when it very first started were the vocalists and keyboardists. A lot of people don't realize this, but we actually had a male vocalist at first.
Interesting.
Yeah, there aren't any recordings with that vocalist, but obviously Heather. But I first discovered Graveshadow on a random search on Facebook and finding out that there was a California symphonic metal band. This was back in, I want to say, 2013 or something like that. I was like, whoa, how have I not heard of this band? So I was super excited to hear about them. And then it just turned out Crepusle, my other band, had a show with them at this venue that we used to have called the Rock Shop in downtown San Jose. No longer there. It's now actually a gym last time I checked. But that was also post-COVID that I was there. But it was Crepusle and Graveshadow with a few other bands playing. So I was really excited to see them. And I made sure to make contact with Will. And he and I became Facebook friends, stayed in touch since. And then follow a year after that, he was doing a small California run for the band. And he reached out to me to see if I could help because Graveshadow is primarily focused in Sacramento. So put a show together for them at a small bar called Bobby D's, which Alikio, who's also in Crepusle, and I used to team up and book shows there periodically between 2016 to 2017-ish, around that time. And had a good turnout, let them crash at my place for the night, which they were really grateful for. And fast forward to later in that year, 2015, they needed a fill-in guitarist. And I had an old band at the time that played that show, and that's when they realized I played guitar. So having that connection with them already, they fill in for this one show, and we did it. We had a lot of fun. And fast forward to the May of that 16, actually, things were starting to not work with the guitarist at the time, Matt, and they were just about to start their tour with Unleash the Archers and Anvil, and they asked me if I could fill in again for that tour. And that was actually my first time going on the road as well. Remember that phone call greatly. It was Will calling me in the middle of some other show I was watching, and then he responds back with, "How do you feel about going on tour?" And I was just like, "Fuck yeah, let's do this." There's no question that, not even planning ahead, even though it was the end of semester. I had some other crunch stuff going on at work, so I didn't even think about that. I just wanted to go out on the road. And then we went out for 2 weeks, and after that, I decided to stay. I didn't want, no questions about it. Loved the guys and gals, wanted to continue working with them, and that's kind of how that started. And then obviously there was a lineup change that happened after 2018. We didn't really know what to do because Heather, let's be honest, was basically seen as the face of the band and had the energy that really got the crowd going. And if you look at a lot of reviews, especially with Ambition's Prize, she is singled out in great ways. So that was our bread and butter right there. And so when she left, we're like, what are we going to do? And Will and I had full intentions of forming a new band because we definitely liked working with each other. And then I had a friend recommend Rachel to our new vocalist. And I sent a sample to Will of what she could do. And he basically called me and said, do whatever you can to get her. So we kept chatting online. We did a Zoom meeting for what we had done in the past and what we'd like to continue. She was on board. Then I got Bones, a drummer I had worked with at the time. time, a previous project to do the record, and then he came on full time. And then Will, through a coworker at the time, found Lucy. And that brings us to the lineup we have now.
Yeah.
That's the condensed version of the history of Graveshadow, at least with me.
No, I understand. My question comes more or less from the side of your background being very symphonic and very melodic while playing guitar and keyboard. So I'm wondering how you're able to switch off between the two, and what draws you to that more symphonic and melodic sound, and while still maintaining that level of heaviness across all bands as well.
Sure. I would say my first introduction to like the combination of symphonic and heavy metal, I think for a lot of people as well, would be the Metallica live album with the S&M, which I loved as a teenager. And I mean, ignorant me at the time was like, I wish there was a genre, or at least a subgenre of metal that was just this as original music, as opposed to just taking pre-recorded material and slapping an orchestra on top of it. Because there was a trend where a lot of bands at the time, like the classic rock, heavy metal, were doing that. You have Metallica, I think Deep Purple did something along those lines, and of course you have Yngwie Malmsteen, who I more knew this as a solo artist. I didn't really know about some other stuff he did at the time. And then actually my brother was the one that showed me Nightwish and Rhapsody of Fire. And Rhapsody of Fire for some reason didn't latch onto me at first, but I think it was more the fact that Nightwish had a female vocalist that I was really driven to. Because prior to Nightwish, I was also getting really into melodic death metal.
Yes.
And this was back in my freshman year of high school. I think our Arch Enemy was definitely the first band that really hit the nail for me. And even at that time, I really wasn't into the screaming vocals, because I remember that we had a little thing, I think it was called Sequoia Sounds, because the school I went to was called Sequoia. And we had this once a month thing where we would have performances in the quad. And that was my introduction to bands with the screaming vocals. And I really wasn't for it at the time, because I was traditionally more into like Motley Crue, Metallica, Guns N' Roses. That was like the heavy stuff for me at the time. I mean, like I said, dumb freshman me.
Yeah.
But then someone mentioned Arch Enemy, a good friend of mine, and then he mentioned how they had a woman vocalist. And for some reason, that just like clicked. Like, I want to hear this. And then hearing that brutality and the melodic side combined, that really got my attention. And then finding other bands like Shadows Fall and In Flames. I think, those were like the few that really got. And then kind of seeing that title, melodic death metal, tagged on all of them, I'm like, this is a genre that I like. And so I just finding other bands that were in that style as well, which brought me to At the Gates, Dark Tranquility, which is another one that I latched onto. One of my favorites. I mean, we jokingly say Michael Stein was my dad because of the hair and the beard. And then, so symphonic metal and melodic death were definitely my bread and butter from my high school, and just expanded from there. I started with guitar. My uncle was the one that actually got me into that. And then I think it was because, my dad played piano younger. We got him a little cheap piano as a kid for his birthday one year, And it was all around that same time I was getting to Nightwish and all those other more keyboard, shoulder bottom kind of bands. So I wanted to start learning that stuff on keyboards. And I didn't, at the time, I still don't think I'm that great of a guitarist. But so I latched more into the keyboards because nobody in the Bay Area, from what I remember, was playing keyboards and metal.
Yep.
So I wanted to take advantage of, I want to be the Bay Area keyboardist. Or at least one of the Bay Area keyboardists, because there weren't that many. I knew of maybe 2 or 3 others. And then that kind of latched me onto that. And I still didn't want to forget playing guitar, because guitar is, for me, a great writing tool. I would say most of the songs I write start from guitar, not so much keyboards. Keyboards I kind of work around. There are some exceptions, but it's definitely more guitar first. And that's kind of how that came to be with those two. But it's kind of fun at the same time, because most people see me as a keyboardist. But then when they see I play guitar too, that's kind of like a head jerk, like, wait, what?
Going back to keyboard, of course, when you're recording and playing live, do you prefer to use an actual, like a keyboard, like a roll-in or something, or do you go with like a keytar?
So the keytar kind of started out as a joke, because this is kind of a tangent. My original keyboard which was a chord, got stolen after a Crepusle show. When that happened, everyone was like, "Oh, now's your chance! Gotta get a keytar." And at the time, I was like, "No," because I need both hands for what I do in Crepusle. There's a lot more classical kind of piano sections. I can't do it single-handed. And then Roland released the AX Edge. I'm like, oh fuck, now I need that. That looks so sick. But recording-wise, I actually have a digital piano that has all 88 keys. Just because of its size and how bulky it is, it just sits in my studio. So I use it more as a practice tool, but then I could plug it into my computer for when I want to actually record parts, especially the more melodic or piano dominant stuff. Piano, harpsichord, that is what what I primarily record in the albums. I'll admit sometimes I'll cheat and program a lot of the orchestral stuff, but that's because I'm very meticulous for what I want each individual instrument in the orchestra to play. So to kind of cut some of the time, I'll manually program it myself, but I'll obviously play it out when I'm putting it all together. But yeah, it's mainly a digital piano for work studio, and then I actually alternate between my Roland DS61 Crepusle and then the AX Edge for Niviane.
Right. You want to go for
Sure. My next question is mainly about how you seem to have always been drawn to more female-led or female-fronted metal bands. I wanted to know your opinion on that term, since it's become very loaded nowadays, and just the whole debate about whether to say female-fronted or even have that kind of like nomenclature, I guess, towards it.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's I mean, I totally get why it's kind of been controversial, for a lack of better terms, because it's it's almost like it's like a separate genre, but it's really not. But you also have the concept of women empowerment, which I think is absolutely amazing. So if anything, it showcases the talent of women in metal in the forefront, which I think is also a shine. But at the same time, it shouldn't be its own separate genre. It should be equal just as much as all the male dominant metal bands. Because, I mean, on top of, it's not just symphonic metal. You also got Arch Enemy, like I mentioned, which is not symphonic whatsoever, is a melodic death metal band. And then you have Unleash the Archers, which is more power metal. And then you got bands like Crypta and Nervosa, which they're not labeled as female thrash or female death metal. It's just women death metal, which is what it should be, and it should be seen as equal. That being said, I remember when 70,000 Tons of Metal came out, was happening last year, and there was a lot of bands that did have a female fronted vocalist. I think I saw the term going around, which was corset metal, which I was like, okay, that's just fucked up, but at the same time, like, couldn't help but laugh a little bit. But yeah, but it shouldn't be seen that way.
Yeah.
It's symphonic metal or whatever, but they just happen to have female vocalists. But I think but with all that said, I think it was just the variety that I got out of that, as opposed to with the more full male dominant bands, because it shows a band being dynamic, especially when they have the male and the female vocalists and add the harmonies. It's the full circle that is more important. It's not just one little area. That should be the focus.
Fully agree.
Let's talk about how you got the gig Viant.
Yeah, so I remember I actually watched the interview you did with Norman yesterday. He kind of touched on it a little bit. But Norman and I had talked about me doing some keyboard stuff with him for a while. I think the first time I remember talking with him was when I ran him at a Killswitch Engage Anthrax show a few years back. And then, because I think he expressed how they wanted keyboards in the Niviane album, and I was like, yeah, just send me some tracks and I'll see what I could do. Then he got me in contact with our guitarist, Mark Miner, who was really kind of overseeing the recording process of. He's basically done all the albums. So I would send him ideas with the demos or rough mixes he would send me, and he would give me feedback off of that. And that was basically the process we did for the Druid, the Druid King. Then we definitely talked about me coming back for the Ruthless Divine, our follow-up album. And I remember, I'm going to put him under the fire right here. Our other guitarist, Gary, was known for not like keyboards. So the keyboards on the first album was low in the mix, which was fine because my keyboards are not meant to be the forefront of Niviane. It's definitely a vocal and guitar-driven band. So at first I was told that it was going to be less keyboards on the album. And I'm like, okay, that's chill. Like, I think they told me 5 or 6 songs were going to have it. And then it was all the songs having keyboards. But I also knew Gary didn't want any, so I tried to make them as minimal as possible. And then I found out he wanted the keyboards higher in the mix. And then I ended up getting the offer to join the band. I'm like, what? So I'm like, I tried to dumb it down, and after dumbing it down, I get the promotion. Okay. But all joking aside, he loved what I did on the album, and that's how I got that gig. And I actually used the same Roland at first for the first couple gigs, and then I think I first got the keytar as a joke, and then it just kind of stayed as my main instrument for Niviane because everyone got all in love with it. It's like, oh, the keytar, that's so sick. Then you add the fact that I do the harsh vocals as well, so it's like, how often do you see a keytar playing dude who does death growls in a power metal band?
Which is real bad.
That was good. Oh, sorry. Oh.
I've yet to see you guys with everybody. The last time I saw them was when it was way before.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying like the Testament show they did.
Yeah.
And then for me, my question is actually about your own personal sound that you add to these bands and what you would classify it as. Because I hear some like Dimmu Borgir, I hear some like, just from my own point of reference, like Emperor in regard to some of the orchestral. A lot of, for me, my influence touches on the like symphonic black metal. So I'm hearing a lot of that. I'm hearing a lot of the atmospheric black metal, like Uada or something like that as well.
I mean, you're speaking my language with all those black metal bands.
I'm wearing a Ethereal shirt myself, if you know them.
Yeah. So. Yes, I would say there actually is a running joke with a few of my friends and even my girlfriend about my trademark in a lot of my songs, and it's actually the bell patches I use. So using Nightwish, for example, if you listen to like the intro to their song Sahara, trying to think of other songs. That's the big one. And if you listen to them or any other symphonic metal band, you'll know what I'm talking about. And the moment any of my friends hear that bell passage, they're like, "Oh, that's Aaron. Aaron did that right there." Or for a Graveshadow example, if you listen to the song "Doorway to Heaven," that intro right there, that was one of my favorite songs on the album. Yeah, that part right there. Though that's like what they call the Aaron sound. Sorry, a little bit of a tangent. Any of you are familiar with that show, Gravity Falls cartoon?
Yep.
So there's an episode where that cop duo is hanging out, and the taller, lanky cop is swinging this bell around, and the shorter cop goes, "He sure loves his bell." And my girlfriend saw that scene, and she's like, "Hey, just like you." I'm like, "God damn it," because it's kind of become known for me with that. But that combined with the orchestra has definitely been, one of my, I would say, my iconic sound. Excuse me for that. That was a little egotistical to say. But I would say Nightwish has definitely been a big influence for me with that. One of my favorites, since you talk about symphonic black metal, Kyrak Gongren is probably my favorite. More from that storytelling perspective, but how the orchestra basically drives the song. It drives the albums, honestly, from front to back. Definitely recommend.
I've read Sin. He's more of the black metal, death metal, hardcore guy.
No, they're all great choices.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I gotta ask, what's your favorite song to perform with, man?
Oh.
Another question is, what is a song that you wish you wrote?
Okay, a song I wish I wrote. Okay, that's gonna be an interesting one. I knew this was gonna come up after seeing Norman's interview too. So I would say for Crepusle, we have there's two that I kind of dealt between. One is called Ethereal Waters, and then there's another one called Limitless. I would say right now, Limitless is probably my favorite live because that song has some peaks and valleys, from like some of the brutal blast beats to the more kind of symphonic stuff to acoustic-y folk stuff. It's all over the board, and that one is a good workout for me as well live, where I'm just like jumping across the keyboard right off the get-go in that song. So it's fun for me to play for sure. With Graveshadow, I would say Soldier of 34 is probably one of the most fun to play live. Again, for how heavy it is. You have the trading vocals between Rachel and me back to back, right in the forefront. And then you also have Will and I doing dual leads, beginning and towards the end of the song. So it's definitely one of our most intense songs live. If you listen to our previous material to that song, that's just like catapult over the brutality or intensity of what our previous material was. And then with Niviane, it's hard to say because we've been teasing a lot of our newer material live, and I'm definitely doing a lot more of that stuff. But I would also have to say, from what we have recently released, I would say probably the title track of the latest album, The Ruthless Divine, is probably one of my favorites live. It's low in the mix, but there's a choir melody that I do throughout most of the song that I really enjoy playing, and then also just the dual vocals between Norman and I. It's always been fun. A song that I wish I wrote, it's actually my favorite song, but also by my favorite band. It's called Swan Savo. It's by the band Eternal Tears of Sorrow. Favorite band of all time. If you like melodic death metal, they're your band. If you like symphonic metal, they're definitely your band. And even if you like goth metal, they're all that in one. And that song really hits all of it front to back. Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out. That's gonna be my drive home song.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's another journey of a song. I'll put it that way.
I have an interesting introspection, is that your whole musical ethos reminds me of the band Moonspell.
So Moonspell is actually a band I've had the weirdest relationship ever with, because I guess one is I never really knew the right album to start. Because I had one girlfriend for a while who always had the logic of starting with their very first album.
Well, it is. Yeah. Their black metal stuff is amazing, and then I'm waiting for your and then moment.
Yeah. because there's some songs I've heard as singles that are really, really good.
Yep.
And then there's some singles that are really, really bad. Like,
just too much camp.
Exactly.
Is there no in between?
Exactly.
No.
There's like no in between. Now, with that being said, I've seen them live 2 times, and they put on such a good show. I saw them when they did that tour with Omnium Gatherum and Dark Tranquility and Amorphous, which was a banging lineup. And their stage presence and their atmosphere, even theatrics a little bit with the vocals walking around with the lantern, was so epic. And I remember seeing them on 70,000 Tons of Metal, and they put on a really good show there too in the amphitheater. So I'll give them that as showmen. They're fantastic. But I just haven't found, I guess, the right album to start with them to say that I'm an avid fan or listener of them.
I may have to get back to you on that.
I would love to hear your opinion, because I will definitely listen to that album front to back.
I'm just going to end with one other just side note. If you like Dark Tranquility, which you say you do, have you seen the guitarist YouTube channel about his whole metal collection, and I believe horror movie collection as well? It's like a double dosage.
I haven't seen that. I would actually love to check that out. Is it one of their newer guitarists?
He is a ginger man with a pretty burly beard.
Okay, yes. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yes. So I would love to check out that YouTube channel, because one thing I'm doing now that it's October is 31 films for the 31 days of Halloween. So, and I've been also watching this other YouTuber kind of getting in preparation for that, named Cody Leach. And his whole shtick is horror as well. So I've been kind of following what he likes or doesn't like for my selection this month, as well as some of the big classics that you can't go wrong. So I'm very curious what he has to say, though, on his YouTube channel.
I will try to find that. I don't have the name offhand.
That's all right.
Brett, find it, send it to me. I'll send it to Aaron.
Will do.
Oh.
All right, so let's talk about martial arts. Seeing that you're a black belt. When did you first
Yeah, actually, fun fact.
arts?
Yeah, there's a little snippet of it. This is the office that I'm filming this in. It's not my gi, but that's some of the gis of the instructors back there.
Well, you are a martial artist.
I am, yeah.
When did you start, and what kind of martial arts did you take?
So I started since I was 10 years old, and I've actually been at the same dojo for the past 22 years. Kind of gives you an idea of my age at that point. But different location. It was just a little down the street from where it used to be, and it's been at this new place for a good while now. The style it's not a traditional style. I would say the center of it is called Hung Gar, and that could be best associated with Southern Shaolin. If you want to take it from a pop culture standpoint, there's actually 2 big things that people could compare it to. You've ever seen the show Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Yeah.
So each of the bending styles in the show are based off of different martial arts. So airbending, for example, is based off of water bending is based off of Tai Chi, and then you have the fire bending that is based off of more Shaolin. I'm blanking on what airbending is based off of, but earth bending is based off of Hung Gar. So if you see in the more deep, rigid stances, and you may see them do this movement right here, which in martial arts stands for Jinji, that's all Hung Gar right there. And then the other one I would say is that Marvel movie that came out a couple years ago, Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings. So the 10 rings are actually a Hung Gar tradition, which is more of a conditioning drill where they would be metal rings around the arm. So when you punch, it will deaden nerves in the arm, strengthening the forearms. Also kind of weight training in a way, because if they're out of a few rings on your arms, it's going to get heavy. And then trying to do those slow, eccentric movements, it's going to make you stronger.
Yeah, I think.
And then aside from that, sorry. Oh. Yeah, that's just one aspect. We also do Filipino stick fighting, or eskrima is the appropriate term. But there are other branches of it that go by the name Arnis or Kali. It's all the same concept of using a rattan stick and basically beating people with it. But that also kind of goes into the subculture of FMA or Filipino martial arts, which is stick, knives, and hand-to-hand combat. And we use quite a bit of that here.
I've got one more question that's related to martial arts. Does your background in martial arts ever inspire music?
Yeah.
Ooh. That's, I would say more the other way around, where the music has helped my martial arts. And part of that is the timing of movements. And a lot of my students know that I am a musician. I don't tell them to check them out, because last thing I want is a bunch of 5 to 10-year-old kids just screaming random death metal vocals and stuff like that. But what I'll do for kind of get more of a rhythmic sense in some of the movements that we do is kind of follow certain time signatures. There's one movement that involves 7 different strikes in a sequence. So I would try to use that 7/8 time signature. I think 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2, and kind of do that with the moves. So that's a little half-assed version of it. But it gets the kids to get a sense of rhythm with how they move. Sometimes I'll use like a waltz or 6/8 signature 1 2 3 1 2 3 with how they move their feet and hands. So it's kind of get them a sense of how to move their body as opposed to just being blocky and rigidy. So it's also, I hate to use the word dance, but kind of a dance in a way.
All right. I never thought about that way. Now it kind of helps. Go ahead.
My next question was kind of inspired by that. Was in the sense that a lot of these Shaolin techniques and just different types of disciplines come with a lot of lore and storytelling about how it came to be, as does a lot of the metal music that we listen to as lore and mythology. And I'm wondering how you see those two intersplicing in regards to how you approach, or is there any type of mythology or lore that you approach to in your own music writing, especially since symphonic takes from a lot of Greek and European mythology?
Yeah, I would say back in my younger, like college, later high school years, I was definitely more, I would probably say like almost every metalhead into Norse mythology. But one thing I will say is, I hate to say I was a noob about it, but I never really dived deep into the finer details. So I was always kind of like skimming the surface of it. But not, and my brother, for example, is really into Greek mythology. One of his favorite books series is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So I've always heard him talk about that and just other things he's researched about Greek mythology alone. But I would say not so much mythology or lore, but history in general has always been more something that's naturally just kind of latched onto me. One of my best friends, he's really into World War II, and he could go on forever about some of the finer details on certain things with World War II and tanks. And in college, I was a music history major. So understanding a lot of origins of certain approaches to composing or influences that other composers from certain cultures gathered has always been something that I've been interested in. And I would say that is what's more kind of been the inspiration, just the general concept of history, which brings me to bands like Sabaton, for example, which are all about World War II and stuff like that.
I got to see Sabaton. It was Battle of Summer. Do you know it was Sabaton, Testament, Megadeth, Anthrax?
Oh, that's a bad
time.
That was on like a Friday the 13th thing over in San Bernardino. That was bitch.
Well, I got a Friday the 13th coming up next week with Mayhem and Cannibal Corpse. So that is like the way to celebrate Friday the 13th this year.
Is that the Decibel tour that's coming through? Oh, it's not coming to here. It's only going to San Diego.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Man. Well, if you're able to make the trek, I definitely recommend, because they all put on a great show. And I mean, like I said, I'm a little spoiled that's on Friday the 13th. I think it would be a heavy metal crime to not go to that show on that day.
The best one that I've seen, King Diamond on Halloween.
Ooh. I had tickets for that show and I sold my tickets because we could go.
Yeah, I think I kind of had something like that last year where it was Merciful Fate, but it was on November 1st. But it's like
it works. It's still within that.
It's close enough.
I didn't go to that, and I beat myself up over it.
That was one of the best shows I've ever. I mean, King Diamond overall puts on one of the best shows. Mm-hmm. Whether it's his solo career or Merciful Fate, you can't go wrong.
I still kick myself. I haven't.
Oh, if you ever get the chance, do it.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. So going back to music, how does songwriting process differ in each?
That's actually a very good question. I would say I'm actually really only involved in the songwriting in a real deep standpoint in Graveshadow. Crepusle is the mastermind of Eligio, our guitarist vocalist. That band would not be what it is without him. He has written basically everything for that band. Cameron, our other guitarist, has written a couple songs, and that definitely shows more in what we're about to record, release in the near future. But what I do is more take the basic chords and melodies that Eligio writes for the keyboards and expand on. More so, not so much the melodies, I usually leave those the same, but I'll take the chords he has along with it and just make them bigger. So as opposed to just a 3-note try on a keyboard, I'll separate like a good handful of that to strings or brass or choirs and intertwine them all together so it sounds bigger, fuller, and just more bombastic. And then with Niviane, that one's I see myself more as atmosphere. I always have, where the guitars and vocals are just so in your face in that band and dominating that I just add that little sense of, I'll say epicness for lack of better terms, just by adding a choir patch, strings, and I'll even double some of the leads with I did that more on this upcoming record with some bells, like I talked about, my quintessential sound, or even harpsichord for some other more classical influences, because Mark's a big guy, so there's a little bit of that neoclassical influence on his end. And then I try to spice it up a little bit more with some harpsichord when I can. And then with Graveshadow, that one's definitely become more me songwriting, especially with the latest record. I wrote probably half that album. There's a good few that were just written by me instrumentally, because I didn't do any vocals. I was all Rachel. And then there's another half that was Will and me feeding off each other. And there's one song that's just him. But basically, I'll start with probably, like I talked about earlier, a guitar riff, show it to Will, he'll give some feedback to me, and I'll just kind of take his feedback and expand on that. And then if a keyboard melody comes to mind, I'll just add that on top of that, or try to have, he likes a lot of harmonies, so there's going to be a lot of dual harmony kind of stuff. Lately, Insomnium has been a big influence for me on a guitar melody standpoint. I got called out on that actually quite a bit on the newest record. Listen to our song The Two Lived, and you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I was in one interview where someone jokingly referred to it as Gravesomnium, and I'm like, that way to call me out. But then I'll send some riffs to Bones, and he'll program some drums, and then we'll kind of workshop his ideas to what a little more, I guess, I don't want to say robotic, because he usually just puts in some plug-in ideas, and then we put a little more feel with jamming out with him with what he had in mind, and then we just record that.
Yeah, I still think it's pretty cool that on Ambitious Price, you guys wrote a song called Hero Time.
Yes. Yeah. Not much of a video gamer, but that is definitely one game that I will always go back to. Yeah. Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, I will always find some time as a way, almost like a coping mechanism in a way. If I need to kind of ground myself a little bit, I may have a good few days or so where I just binge that game, which definitely happened during COVID.
Do you remember the first time you beat Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time? Because I remember the first time I actually beat it finally. Yeah,
and actually, funny story is my mom actually beat the game before I did.
What?
Yeah, when we first got the game, my brother, my mom, and I, we all just like fed off each other with that game. And I remember she was so excited when she beat that game that we came home and we were all like, oh, how does it end and stuff like that. But we were all naive at the time, so we just come to a screen that just says the end. Yeah. And so she turned the system back off and then on, and then the game returned to the last saving point, which is obviously before you fight Ganon. And she was so mad. She's like, I have to redo it all over again. But not knowing that that's how the game worked. We were really new to the Nintendo 64 at that time. But then I think I was the one that beat it next. This was back in, I was in 4th grade when it happened. But that was definitely a highlight for us.
That leads me to two interesting questions. One being, because these video games and even the likes of like Final Fantasy have such, grounded soundtracks that are so iconic, would you ever try to come up with a metal version different than what many people do on YouTube, but in a way that is a accompaniment to a video game?
I have thought of that for a couple games. Another game that's actually another one of my favorites that I think is criminally underrated. It's called Dark Cloud.
Yep.
Yeah. It's if you love Zelda, and I would say Final Fantasy and The Sims, if they had a baby, that would be that game, because you have the world building or reconstructing of villages like The Sims in a way, and then the character, in fact, he doesn't really talk, and some of the sounds he makes is a carbon copy of Link, and then you have the team of Final Fantasy, but the music of that game, whether it's the first game or the second game, fantastic score. So that is one that I would definitely love to do some sort of rendition of. But a little tongue-in-cheek we did when Graveshadow played Mad with Power back in August. We did the little battle theme. What song? We ended War Chief with that. That's right. As a little way to conclude the set.
Oh, that's epic. And then the second part of the question was just coming from a guitar metal standpoint. How do you approach the infamous breakdown in heavy music? Do you encourage it? Do you think of trying to write it less for moshing and more for ambience or more for a sense of adding tension in a song?
So yeah, more that latter, adding tension to the song. And I've kind of had a cheat with how I use breakdowns, is because I've always kind of done the guitar breakdown, but accompanied with keyboards in a way. So so the guitars kind of create that tension that you were talking about, and kind of literally break down in them for a moment, but still kind of keep that sense of eeriness in a way. Eternal Tears of Sorrow, going back to them, there's one song on their album, A Virgin and a Whore. Great album, by the way. If you ever haven't checked it out, that's another recommendation. I think that was the big one that encouraged me to take that approach to breakdance. And there's a song on wow, I'm brain farting the album title, Uncertain Hour, the newest Graveshadow album, where I try to give a little nod to that album with a certain section from that song.
So we've just given the clock. You got 15 minutes left on this call before it ends. So go to this till it ends.
Absolutely.
All right, bands that you would love to go on tour.
So, oh man, I mean, that's hard to say because one of my biggest, yeah, well, I'll say with this one won't count, but Serenia was one of my other biggest influences as a musician, playing multiple instruments, and with Serenia's main guy practically recording everything. And the fact that Graveshadow got to tour with them twice is the biggest dream come true I could ever accomplish. Lately, I've been listening to another band called Shade Empire, and another melodic industrial symphonic band. I would love to tour with them. If they could ever cross the seas of Finland into the US, I would be the first to try to hop on that tour. If we want to talk about really bigger bands, Epico would not be a bad choice. That's another band that I've always looked up to from just the layout, the female vocals, death vocals, 7-string guitars, and orchestra. That was, I think, the biggest thing for me when I was in high school. Like, that was the dream come true. So there's them. I mean, hell, the Halo Effect is another band that is taking everyone by storm because it's a return to form from live death. If they ever do a big U.S. tour, I would not mind being on that one. We said 5?
Yep.
All right, let's see if I could come up with some other bands. Think about some of the smaller. Seven Spires is another one I would love. They're definitely, I mean, I don't want to call them new because they definitely have been making a name for themselves over the past few years, being on some big name tours. Adrian has been on Avantasia tours, and their drummer just joined Testament. So they're making a big name for themselves, and I've met them a few times. They're great folks. I would love to do a tour with them as opposed to just the few shows I've stopped and said hi here and there. Just being on the road would be an amazing moment. And there's this other newer one called Empress that's also super talented, and I would love to share the road with them.
Go for it.
Based off of that, what are some bands that you really want people to check out, whether label mates, whether just local bands, friends of friends?
Absolutely. Yeah, no. One band I would love to give a shout out to is Anubis. They are a LA-based band that's definitely coming more into that power metal, thrash metal scene. I've been friends with a couple of the members in there. Definitely recommend giving them a shout out. Yeah, love those guys. In more the Bay Area scene, there's a lot of tech bands in that area. A lot of thrash as well. My guitarist in Crepusle, he's also in this other band called Hallucinus. Definitely recommend those guys. And actually, you were talking about Creative Destructor. Another band that Cameron's in is Darkness Everywhere.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's actually Ben from Creative Destructor and Light the City and Cameron. Yeah, if you like At the Gates, it is straight up At the Gates style metal. And then another one that is Bay Area that we all love in Crepusle that is I think should go really far is called Night, but it's spelled Nite. If you like, it's like Thin Lizzy with black metals.
Holy shit!
Okay,
if you like Tribulation,
yes,
it's that, but I would say they do Tribulation better than Tribulation.
So is it like Raspberry Bulbs, if you know that band?
Yeah.
That completely up my alley.
Yeah, I would definitely give that band a shout out.
Night, Nite.
Nite, yes. I will say be careful when you look them up because I think there's a pop band that goes by that same name. But if you look up Night and then Season and Mist, because they're on that label, they should pop up.
I love that label.
Yeah, great label.
Do you have any crazy road stories during tours or anything that you'd like to share?
One of my absolute favorites that happened last year actually was when it was Graveshadow's first tour back after our hiatus. We had bought this RV RV. It's like a 32-year-old RV now, so definitely rough. But Will was the one very protective of it, so he did most of the driving. And we were actually playing the Viper Room on this tour as well. So we're driving this giant RV through West Hollywood traffic, which, if you know West Hollywood traffic, yeah, and trying to find parking, if you know the Viper Room in that back lot or along the streets, yeah, good luck. But I was on the phone with my girlfriend at the time, and we both took a pause on the phone for a moment because we have Will in the front just shouting out, "Speed up!" and just cussing and swearing at all the drivers because they did not know how to drive around an RV in LA. And we both were just laughing. And Rachel managed to catch a TikTok of it, of all that stuff that I missed while I was on the phone. So it's been a running gag between Rachel, Will, and I whenever we're on the road and someone just slowing down, just like, "Speed up!" and just like mocking his voice and other cussing he was doing with that.
Well, we're going to wrap this up. Aaron, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you? And
Yeah, so for Crepusle, Niviane, and Graveshadow, you can find any of our music on all streaming platforms, Spotify, you can find Bandcamp and Facebook, all that good stuff. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. You go by the Instagram handle KeymasterIshFantastic. There's some multiple stories for where that name came from, but that's another tale for another time. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Sounds good. We'll put it all in the link in the description. That way you guys just can go and click. And all right, anything else you'd like to add, Brutal Brett, before we close?
No, I want to thank Aaron for coming on the show. This has been a true delight.
Absolutely.
Very entertaining.
Joining us. We appreciate you, and it was a great time having you here. And to have back.
Likewise, thank you very much.
Person one of the days.
Absolutely, and thank you to Jana again for giving me the shout out to come onto the station with you guys.
Thanks, Jana. All right, for me, Brutal Brett, and Aaron, this has been an episode of Fun Never Ends Podcast. Fun Never Ends Podcast can be found on all podcast platforms. Go to funneverendspodcast.com or click the link in the description. And all right, check us out. All right,
awesome.
Have a great night.
We'll
catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.